All right, welcome to another episode of Behind the Visual. I am your host, Mark Hansen, and today we are going to interview one of the people responsible for putting together, creating, and producing some of those images you see out in your world every single day. Her name is Michelle Zapata, and Michelle is a senior manager of production at Authentic Brand Group. And if you guys don't know who Authentic Brand Group is, go check them out. These dudes on Sports Illustrated, Nautica, Nine West, Fried, Juicy Couture, and a whole bunch of others. So Michelle definitely has her hands full working on all these things, these brands. So thank you, Michelle, for doing this. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Mark.
it. Looking good.
Thank you so much on this early morning Saturday.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I appreciate you doing this, especially
Only
after
for
the
you.
week. Thank you. That makes me feel good. That's good.
You got it. You got it.
All right. So what's going on? Tell me a little bit about how you got started in this whole thing. How did you go from being a kid to being a producer at Authentic Brand Group?
So, well, I started out with getting teen magazines, like, when you're 12, 13 years old, and there were all these like teen bop. I'm totally dating myself, but that's okay. you know, and I love those magazines. I was like, I want to make the pictures that go into these magazines. So, go through high school, end up in fine arts, go to FIT for advertising and communications, because I had entered the year too late to be in the photo program. So I said, I'll do AdCom for 6 months, and then I'll switch over into photography. And then I was too lazy to switch anywhere.
So did you go in there wanting to be a photographer?
Yeah, I wanted to do photography related to fashion photography, anything that had to do photography was like a want.
Because you're good. Yeah, you were good at shooting. So I've noticed that. Oh, and by the way, for anybody watching, the painting up behind her, Michelle did that all by herself. One color,
Yeah,
which
one
blows
color.
my mind that it was just one color. Okay, sorry. Go back to what you were saying.
I get it. So went to FIT, did AdCom for 2 years, and for the kiddies that are watching, 2 years in school is not enough. Go back and get your 4, because that's a really quick way of doing it, and then you don't ever have to think about it again. And when you get an application and it says bachelor's, check, you're done. But anyway, back to the story. Get back to FIT, and while I was there, I did an internship in London for advertising communications company called DMBMB. And I got to see the way the creatives work, the entire agency and how it ran, from finance to creatives. And what I loved the most was the creative teams. So there was the creative director and the art director, and they made the concepts. They made everything happen. So when I came back, I was hoping to get into media. Didn't happen exactly that way. I was pulled into a modeling and talent agency that was going to open up in New York, an affiliate of Elite Models. And I've started working with this woman who had several other companies in Minnesota, and she trained me as an agent, for marketing, for business, for everything else. So we worked together for a few years, and unfortunately she had come to New York because she was getting married, and it didn't work out. So she decided to close her New York office and go back to where she was from. And I lost my job. So I started looking around for a job, and a friend of mine was working at Time Inc. For the People brand. And he said, listen, they need a business office assistant. I'm like, what the hell is that?
That sounds creative.
Yeah. And I was like, tell me about it. So he's like, basically it's balancing budgets and getting everything together on the business side, on the publishing side. And I said, okay, set it up. It's magazines. I'm there. I just need my foot through the door and I'll make my way. Tenacious little.
Yeah, that's
anyway.
impressive.
Yeah, right?
I would have been like, yeah, I'm not interested in that.
Well,
yeah,
what? It's money, right? If you learn how to manage your money, you can manage other people's money. You learn how to manage on bigger money. And if you make a mistake, it's not your money. And then you learn, right? So I wasn't qualified for the position, but I kept insisting. And they couldn't find somebody to take the salary they were offering with the qualifications in that position. And I kept insisting. So they said, okay, all right, fine. You won't stop calling. So here you are. Um, so I started working as their business office assistant, which meant for that particular magazine, we were balancing all their budgets straight across. And at the time, they were not a profitable magazine. They have like a rule about 5 years and how you can be, if you're not profitable in 5 years, then you get the shutdown. So I started looking at ways to save money, to find that their photo department was the biggest, they were bleeding the most. And it was because negotiations hadn't been done, because barters hadn't been made, rights were not managed. There was just a lot of like waste. So I got together with the legal department at Time Inc. and we came up with like a system, and I was able to save them 1/3 of what they were missing to make profit.
I bet all those photographers and the photo agents hated you.
No, you know
You go
why?
in there with not negotiating, you got your rate, and then all of a sudden, boom.
But no. What it was more of these guys they were putting through their invoices and no one was ever paying them. So they would accumulate, and then they would have fees, and then they would have all these other things they needed to get through. So the photographers, agents, everyone would call me because I was the one paying the invoices. So we developed a relationship, and I was able to talk to them. Hey, we have this, we owe you this, but can we meet me halfway? Just like a debt collector, and say, okay, I owe you 100, but I've got 75. I can pay you out 75 tomorrow. Can we call it 75? And you know what? After a year of not being paid and not seeing anything, you're like, okay, I'll take 75.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, and it was better that they did get paid, and because there were also no track records of the way they were handling things. So nobody kind of knew, maybe they got paid already, maybe they didn't. So this was a balancing act. But anyway, after 2 years, they promoted me. It was not my cup of tea because I was no longer working with the financial person I was with. He was incredible. He made me love money. And after that, I went to human resources and I said, look, I've been doing this for 2.5 years, but I want to get to the editorial team. I want to be in the photo area. This is where I want to be. And she laughed, literally laughed. And she said, that's just impossible. That doesn't ever happen. That's just not going to happen, Michelle. I'm sorry. And, a little deflated, I left, and I was like, this isn't cool. And about a month later, I got laid off from that position. And I was like, well,
so
screw it.
You went up and asked to move to the photo department. They laughed at you, said, no, that's never going to happen. And then you got laid off.
Yep. A month later, I got laid off.
Wow.
And it was okay, because within a couple of weeks, the director of photography at that magazine that I worked with called me and said, look, I know that you love photography. I know you've had your own exhibits. You're an artist. She's like, but you know how to work with money. And my budget is on the floor. If you can come in and help me with my budget, I will teach you everything you need to be my deputy photo editor. All right.
That's a pretty good deal. Yeah. Wow.
Yep. So it was. That's what happened. And I walked into the people group, and she basically showed me nuts to bolts, anything I had to do. I knew the players because I had been paying them. I had been working with them, all the agencies. So I knew the players. I just needed to know what the logistics were. And she taught me all of that. And the cool part was there was things that she didn't want to do and celebrities that she didn't know in the Latin market. And she would say, oh, I don't know who this is. You handle that.
Nice.
And I would. And there were people like Sofia Vergara that I got to meet. And this was before her big TV show here in the States. We knew who she was in South America, but we didn't know who she was here. I knew who she was because I know me, right? Yes. And then basically I got to work with all these celebrities, these stylists, photographers, all these amazing people and teams, and I understood the rotation. After a bit of time there, Meredith Corporation called and they said, hey, we've got this, Spanish speaking magazine Spanish language magazine. We want, would you like to join us? And I said, sure, let's see what this is about. So I joined with them freelance, or what would later be called permalance. And I just worked with them, and it was important for me to work with magazines that kind of were double language, where they were bilingual, where they did speak to my particular audience as being a Latina, as speaking Spanish, as Spanish is my first language. So it was important for me to make sure that there was some sort of voice and representation within that Latin market. So then I did that, and I worked with some more amazing creatives that basically said, oh, you know what, if you do this, you can do it this way. And you learn every single day, every single set, there's something new that you pick up. And then it just left over. And a creative director I was working with, she was like, you're a photo editor by name, but realistically, you're a producer. And it just opened up this whole world. And I was like, oh yeah, I am. And after, every magazine is starting to close and you're losing your friends, everybody's walking out with a brown box and tears. It's really kind of crappy. Then I decided I'm going to go back to freelance for a couple of years.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do they really walk out with a brown box of all that crap in it? I've never worked in corporate, so I don't know how that works.
Yes. So basically they laid everybody off. They said, this is, the last day, what have you. And They had boxes waiting for you. They had moving boxes waiting for you. And some people left with, personal stuff, and the other stuff they'd either come back for or they would have shipped to them. Right. And if you're on a floor with 3 different magazines and 2 of the 3 are
that's a lot of people walking out the door.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. It really is heartbreaking.
I'm sure.
So I was like, no more. I think I'm going to try to do digital. I'm going to try to do fashion. No more publishing for me. So after a couple of years of doing freelance, I still got to work with some of my favorite photographers, people that had called me and said, hey, I'm working on this. I've only got 10 cents per production, but, and just because of the passion, the love, the want to do it, and because of the photographers are amazing, the creatives are amazing, let's do it. And then Saks called, Saks Fifth Avenue. And I was like, wait, what? Saks Fifth Avenue. Okay.
How do they find you?
LinkedIn.
Oh, okay.
And LinkedIn got the note saying this position is available. We've seen your LinkedIn. Would you have any interest in speaking to HR? Absolutely. So it was a different world because we're talking e-com versus fashion, but it's editorial e-com that I would be going into. So I accepted. The first year was insane because they had gone through major layoffs in the company and pulling together all their brands under one creative team. So that was nuts. And then after about a year, things smoothed out a little bit more. And then 2.5 years, ABG, here we are. So I've been working with them since December, and I had some of our major brands shoot already in St. Thomas. I just came back from St. Thomas. Yay!
Rough life. Yeah, wow. That's terrible. I mean, if you got to pick, and at least the e-com wasn't, e-com on figure in front of a plain backdrop all day long, the same thing. So at least you got to do some cool stuff.
Yep. And if it hadn't been, it would have been like
oh yeah.
Well, back to freelance we go.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Yeah. That's got to be a cool gig though. I mean, to have Saks just call you out of nowhere.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good. Well, you know what? I'd also been applying to different places in-house and so on. So there's a lot, you put in for one place and sometimes it's the company home base. So you might apply for one now and maybe it's 3 months from now that you get a call, or 6 months from now that you get a call. It happens.
So did ABG reach out to you?
No, a friend of mine, she was offered the invitation to join ABG. And she didn't want to take it because there is no work from home. There's limited PTO. There's not unlimited PTO like Saks has. And she knew I'm looking for growth, and
Yeah.
she passed it along to me, and here we are.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yay!
Yeah, yeah. All right. So tell me, how's it work over there? So when they decide they're going to shoot whatever brand it is, how's it work on your end? Do they come in and just drop something off in front of you, or do you have any input ahead of time with all this? I mean, how's it go when from the day they decide they need to shoot something? What happens on your end up until you end up having to? It's all done. You wash your hands of it and move on to the next thing.
So in normal standards, you'd have a calendar of some sort, and you'd be able to look at a calendar and say, hey, Mark's shooting on Tuesday, and I've got Jill shooting on Wednesday, and so on for the different brands. This is a little bit differently structured. I might get an email. I will say, we need to deliver these assets by May 25th. And I'll backdate them out about 6 weeks so that we can try to the goal is to have it within 6 weeks, because then you have a comfortable amount of time to edit, to retouch, to make changes in case a client decides, I maybe don't like that shot or whatever, just to have a little bit of cushion. Then I need to find out what all the deliverables are. What are they trying to shoot? Are they shooting for print? Are they shooting for, billboards? Are they shooting for commercial? Is this going to be social media, digital media? It's a hot mess, but we need to know that when we contract models, photographers, they need to know what the usage is going to be. So that's the next step in our rotation, is to know exactly what it is we are selling. What are we trying to sell, and who's got to be involved, and how much that's worth. And then we'll give everybody else the information. So basically our creative director will say, I liked Joanna A and Joanna B and Joanna C. I want to see them in for casting. Sure. So we'll set up casting. We'll do, basically production entails anything and everything, including holding a celebrity's tote bag while they stand there and look cute. It happens. So there's a lot of, being a good producer means pulling back your ego and keeping it back here so everybody else's ego can be in the room at the same time. But yeah, that's pretty much the rotation of how I'll get the information. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes. And sometimes I have as much as 3 days notice before something has to shoot in order to be able to provide the assets. So that's a tailspin. You have to make it happen. Wow. And you do the best you can to make it happen. But of course, in those logistics, things will get a little messier.
So this 3-day deal, if it comes in 3 days, do you got to get photographers, models, locations, catering, transportation, hotels, all that stuff set up in 3 days?
Yeah. I mean, normally if it's a 3-day situation or 4-day situation, it's going to be local. And the creative directors pretty much have the teams that they want to work with already. Okay. So it's a matter of availability and where on the roster people are. So if photographer's not available, you move to photographer number 2 for availability. Same thing, hair, makeup, models. It's kind of just like a roster. You'll go down and this is this person's favorite. This is this person's, who they go to, so that I can make sure that the creative is as comfortable as they can be in this short amount of turnaround. So sometimes that's where you're kind of over a barrel, so you have to give the rates that are, you can't always negotiate better rates under those circumstances. Right. And sometimes you can, because if a photographer is not working or hair makeup is not working, they're like, oh crap, I had nothing, now I have something. So it's a toss up.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
But yeah, everything has to be done.
I had somebody call me for a TV show to shoot stills on some home improvement TV show, and they were like, hey, we need to shoot these 3 days. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And I mean, literally we were going to be shooting the next day or the day after, I can't remember what it was. And then they were like, we have $900.
Nice.
Like, no, it was $1,000 for all 3 days. I went,
nice.
For all 3 days? They said, yeah, we can maybe go to 1,500. or
Maybe.
1,200. Yeah. And I was like, all right, well, I appreciate you calling. You know,
Thanks.
yeah, that was one of those where I was like, okay, I'm not working right now, those 3 days, but yeah, I can't do it for that.
Yeah, no, you're not
But
going to end up trying to owe somebody money so that you can work
yeah,
either.
yeah, it was a little ridiculous. I couldn't, but I'm sure they found somebody. I guarantee you somebody out there was like, oh, okay, I'll do it.
Probably from
Yeah,
Instagram.
probably. You're right. Oh my God.
I'm sorry. It is what
No,
it
but you were
is. I have
right.
to mention it. It is a sad situation out there with that.
Yeah. God. And yeah, and half of them are shooting with their iPhone and doing all kinds of filters to make it look decent. And
Yep. And if
but
you
they
need it for
have,
anything outside of a phone picture, it doesn't go.
who was it? It was, did you hear David Beckham? Was it Brooklyn Beckham? His kid, his son, David Beckham's son,
Mhm.
16 years old, shot some mega campaign. I can't remember who it was,
Yeah.
but
I don't remember, but yeah, on his iPhone.
yeah, but he was only because he had like 1 million, 2, 3 million followers or whatever, I think is why they picked the kid. Now, he's not a bad photographer,
Hmm.
but I mean, this dude, 16 years old, shooting a major campaign, never done it before in his life, but he had a couple million followers.
Yep.
So,
And that's what's becoming a little bit of a norm. I've I've curiously asked about some of our brands and the who's been shooting, and come to find out there were some social media influencers. There's social media this, some Instagram photographers. Like,
uh,
if you can't put the camera off of manual, you're not a full photographer.
yeah. Have you seen
Like,
that shirt? So, or
yes,
is that say
yes.
everybody's a photographer until it has a little manual thing?
You will think, yep, that's
Yeah.
exactly where I'm getting it from. Like, that's the best way to explain it. There's just a lot more detailed in being a photographer, and I think that due to money and budgets, people forget that just because you can take a pretty picture doesn't mean that you've sold a sellable picture.
Yeah.
It's a pretty picture. It doesn't mean that it's checking off all your boxes as to what you wanted to accomplish.
Have you been asked to consider that at all when at any place you've worked, that how many followers they have on Instagram or whatever? If you're looking for
Yes.
new photographers, yeah.
Yeah, they want to know about the social media. Where is their social media? Do they have, which is crazy because the busier a photographer is, the less time they have to put all these other caveats together on a smorgasbord for things. Same thing. I feel the same thing about agents who have photographers who have agents and photographers who don't have agents. Sometimes people are busy enough and are disciplined enough to run their own business and be fine on their own,
Yeah.
and other times you've got agents that help move the process along. It's great either way, but I don't think one holds more value than the other. Except when we're talking about social media, where you're pulling people who are wonderful. They've got great followers. They've got maybe they do have a creative eye. But when I say, hey, here are the specs of how I need this to run. I need this for digital. I need this for print. I need this for a Times Square billboard. It's going to be,
Yeah, they
and
probably have no clue what you're talking about. Yeah.
I barely have any clue about what I'm talking about because I don't do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't shoot for it. So in terms of specs, I know what it needs to happen, but how to make it happen is a different situation. And that's why I'm not the photographer.
But you're good at what you do. My God, you're very good at what you do, which is, it's a pleasure shooting with you. Yeah. So you
Yay.
always have it all buttoned down. It's always nice. It's always, if I've ever had a question and I asked you, you always had an answer. And
Yay.
there were plenty, their producers, especially those ones who are first starting out, you ask, what's the usage on this? And they just go, what? What do you mean? Usage? I'm like, yeah, what are you using it for? I need to know.
Well, we plan on using it.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna use it. I said, okay, do you have a boss? Can I talk to them?
They're busy.
Yeah.
Putting through my divorce papers right now with the company.
So tell me about one of your favorite shoots.
Favorite shoots.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a lot of different things happen to me that I call it like my Forrest Gump life of production. Where I've ended up has been surprising sometimes. I think we ended up at the White House with Michelle Obama
Really?
for Parents Magazine, and and in all truth, I think I kind of elbowed my way into that photo shoot a little bit because our main parents were shooting for Parents Magazine, and we were going to get a cover for the Spanish title edition. So I insisted that no one's going to know better of what our Latino market needs than your Latina editor and producer. So
That's
I got to meet,
genius.
yeah, right? It worked. I got to meet Michelle Obama. And as Michelle calls him, Barry, when he came down into the kitchen. So that was an incredible moment, just to say that as a little kid, you've gone to the White House, seen it from outside, and been like, I wonder what it looks like in there. And then many years later, end up like basically being screened by the Secret Service to be able to walk into the White House.
So
And
you were hanging out in the White House kitchen
yes, that's where we were.
with the
We were,
president and the first lady?
yeah. Well, Barry didn't come out for a very long time, but I was hanging with Michelle. And Michelle is absolutely freaking stunning. I cannot express this enough. There are people that, she photographs well, but if you see her in person, you're like, oh my God, like she is amazing, like just stunning. And her entire demeanor is incredible. And then, while we were done shooting, she tells her assistant, she's like, hey, do you think Barry's done? I want him to come down and say hello to the children. And then that's when I'm like, ooh,
Wow.
oh. And that was a really cool experience. You had 5 Secret Service people come in. They tell you to put your backs up against the wall, and they just like check everything out. And he came in, and then I was like, oh shit, good thing I voted for you.
Did you get to keep your phone and all that, or they make you put your phones away?
I don't think we had our phones available to us, but I did
Yeah.
have my camera because I was doing like behind the scenes with the kids for the magazine. So I was taking their shots when we were downstairs and just playing with the kids because they were not professional models. They were kids from a local school. So just to kind of help them warm up and get the camera in their face so that they wouldn't be too shocked by the experience, I was playing with them and taking behind the scenes shots while they were getting ready and all that good stuff. So I did have that, but I don't remember having my phone with me at all.
So no selfies with the president.
No, but I mean, you know me, I would have tried if it were possible.
Oh, I know you would have.
Shoot, I would have gotten them to get the girls too. Bring the girls out. Where they at?
Yeah, I'm surprised you can get them in the shot.
Yeah.
Over there with Michelle. My God. That's pretty cool.
It was really cool.
Did you guys have to set up, like bring in like backdrops and set all that up, or just bring in a couple of lights? And how'd you do it?
It was definitely lights. There were enough lights. Everything was basically portable. There was no backdrops. We used the kitchen, the White House kitchen, as a backdrop. And it's interesting because they had a row of pots behind Michelle's head. And I said to the creative person at the time, I said, hey, do you mind if we take those pots out of it so that this way you have a clean background? Because on a cover, it's gonna look really busy. And she was a little nervous, I think, because of who we were shooting, and she didn't want to like stop anybody from setting up. So she said, "No, leave it." And then, sure enough, when we came back, we had to pay thousands of dollars to have those pots retouched out. Oh. And I'm like, okay, well, I got taught right. My creative director taught me right, so I was able to see that right away.
Yeah, I think that's a good skill too.
Right? It's up to us to help you. It's up to us to help you see something that your eyes are in a million different places trying to focus what you need. So if everyone on set is aware of these tiny little things that might happen later, it's like you're creating this symbiotic magic and everything just looks perfect from the get. It's just a little bit of
Which as a photographer, I like. I think there's some photographers who maybe don't like that input, but I like it because I've noticed before I'm shooting and I'm concentrating on one certain thing because I know that's an important part of whatever we're shooting. And so I'm
Mhm.
kind of watching it through the viewfinder, and I will miss, a hair coming this way, and I'll have the hair makeup go, hold on a second. Oh, thank you, God, I missed that.
Mhm.
Or like you said, the pots in the background. I may be looking at the lighting and the
Right.
framing, and I will miss those pots hanging in the shot in the background. So it's nice. I think it's nice to have that kind of deal, have that kind of input from people. And you don't always. I don't think every photographer is into it. I've heard anyway that some of them aren't. But
Yep.
my thing is, if you see something, tell me, bring it
Hmm.
up. If I think it's not a big deal, I'll tell you. If it is, I'm like, okay. And if I'm not sure, we'll shoot it and we'll see.
Right. Well, that's what I love about you, Mark. You have the flexibility to roll with the moment, and that's huge. I think, like you're saying, there are photographers who feel like they're being maybe spoken down to, or in a somehow like you're bringing down their creative vibe by pointing out something like a hair or anything like that. So it's people tread lightly around the photographers, but if you have someone that you work with that you're comfortable working with, and that's the way it should be. You should always have that like relationship with your photographer to be able to say anything and say, hey,
Yeah.
maybe this doesn't work, maybe let's try it this way. And that's one of the things I love working with you about it, because it wasn't just let's shoot it this way. For a second there was another idea that popped into your head, and can we try this? Hell yeah, let's try it. Because now we're talking about digital, we're not talking about film anymore. So
Right.
you can take that extra 10 minutes and just go with it. And some of the best stuff we've seen are the things that we didn't plan on shooting, but we shot on an off the moment situation. And that's what brings magic. So kudos to you, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, but I agree. I don't know. I just think it's more interesting that way. And I've had times where people have said, "Hey, why don't we try this?" And I look at it and I'm like, "Yeah, that's not going to work," And I've had
Right.
art directors go, "What if we shoot over here?" And if they want to shoot it, I go to look at it. But I can tell. Like there was one I'm thinking he was like, "Let's shoot here," and well, we can't because the light's so much worse here than it
Right.
is over there, and we're trying to get this natural feel. So unless I'm going to just flood it with lighting, and you can tell, it's and he was thankfully on this one he was okay. He said, "Okay, I understand it, and let's go shoot over someplace else." But yeah, overall, I mean, my job is to be there for you. I think.
Hmm.
I mean, it's to make as a photographer. I think it's supposed to be to make you look as good as possible. So you look good to whoever your boss is, whoever your client is, and I will obviously tell you if I don't like something or if I think it's going to look bad, and I'll give you ideas if I think, hey, what if we shot it this way? Well, if we shot it that way, And it's nice to have somebody like you who will go, okay, if you think it'll work, say let's try it. Like I had one client one time. We shot something in front of a fountain for the cover of her lookbook. I'm not a real big fan on shooting in front of fountains, but whatever. We shot in front of a fountain, and on the way back, there was this really cool tree. I was like, what if we put her in front of this tree and get some cool shots in front of the tree? She's like, I'm not doing a senior portrait. We're not shooting that. Let's keep moving.
Oh,
I was like, I'm not trying to make it look like a
dang.
senior portrait. Yeah, that wasn't what I was thinking at all. But she wasn't having it. So,
Okay.
packed up and moved on.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
whatever.
well, that's the difference. You'll still get them what they need and what they want. It's always that, but then there's that extra Mark Hansen to the side, kind of like I'm gonna give you that little extra that you're gonna be like, oh shit, that's why I work with Mark.
I like that quote.
I'm just saying. I can put it on your LinkedIn.
There you go. Yeah. That's perfect. I'll take that.
No.
So you got anything cool coming up that you're going to be going
Well,
anywhere fun with?
well, I might have a couple of months ago when I first started here. The company owns about 50 brands. They're licensed with about 50 brands.
Now, are you the
But
only producer with your title that handles all those, or are there multiple people?
well, it's my director who's above me, and then very soon on Monday, this coming Monday, we have a manager who will be beneath me and a coordinator for the team starting. So we'll actually be a team.
Hey, so your team, so now your team that you will have on Monday, y'all handle all 50 brands?
Right now, yeah. I think that
Wow.
because I'm pretty much new still, and these girls are obviously going to be new. It's going to be a kind of a learning experience to handle all 50 for a minute. And then we can like maybe divvy it up in a different way so that this way everybody has their own brands to work
Right.
on.
Okay.
But we'll have to see how that, how that shakes out.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it's definitely I thought to myself a few years ago, because you think about, well, I fantasize about where I'm going to be. Like, I was a kid and I said I want to work in magazines, and I fantasized about it. I went to visit DC and I said I want to go to the White House, and it happened. So I think I'm very blessed in when I want something or and it comes from my heart, it actually manifests. And about 2 years ago, I was standing in Times Square at New Year's Eve, and I was explaining to my little cousin about how I will produce the stuff that she's seeing at Times Square. I was like, one day I'm going to have a billboard in Times Square. It's going to be my production billboard in Times Square. And, come early January, I find out I'd be shooting for men's clothing, and it's going to be a billboard in Times
Oh,
Square,
wow.
baby.
Nice.
So yeah, so
Very
I
nice.
am, it's definitely those things that like keep you going, keep it like, all right, if I keep working hard, if I do it from the heart, because there's a difference between just working and working from the heart.
Yeah.
And I do believe I give it my 110% all in every time when I'm shooting, just because it's about the experience for everyone on set. It's not just about the famous model. It's not just about the key hair and makeup person or styling. It's about the entire team. So if you can make that experience for everyone on set amazing, then you create billboards.
Yeah, that's great. I think I had one time, but I found out because I did a Google search for the company and saw it. Yeah,
No,
nobody told me.
but
Yeah, that was
usage, Mark,
yeah, that was
usage.
disappointing. I'd already signed off on the usage on that. But
Damn
yeah, yeah, no kidding.
it.
What's it like being in Times Square on New Year's Eve? Did you have to get there early, or is it when we just kind of showed up? We're there. I mean, because my brother did it one year, but I never really asked him. Like, are you like up against the barriers and standing there all day long?
Oh no. Born
Okay,
and
good.
raised in New York, Mark, right?
Yeah, I
So
figured there's a hack for this.
no. There was never ever a moment where I wanted to go to Times Square for New Year's Eve ever.
Yeah,
Because if you don't know, people who go out there early, they're in diapers.
that's what I was
And
thinking. Yeah.
yep, they're in diapers because once you
Mm.
go in, you can't come back out and still make it back in, right? So 90% of the people out there are in diapers, and they're doing their business until New
Oh
Year's
no.
Eve.
Mm-mm.
So this is not my idea of spending my New Year's Eve in New York, Times Square, in like 20-degree weather or 10-degree weather. But my family came from Puerto Rico and they wanted to experience Times Square. So what we did was get a hotel room that was just down the street from Times Square, and they have their own access ports. So basically they have a little area that's just for the visitors coming from this hotel. And we basically partied at the hotel until 11:45. And then we walked out into that little space. And when the ball dropped, we hallelujah, amen, happy new year, celebrated. And that time that we did it, it felt like below, I think it was like -2, it felt like, because of how cold it was.
Oh no.
So we did our
Mm-mm.
little thing. It was an incredible experience to feel that energy of everyone in this beautiful, like celebrating and having fun. And it didn't feel like there was any malice in the air whatsoever. It was really a very neat experience. And then at like 12:02, we walked right back into the hotel and warmed the hell up
Yeah. Damn.
and partied a little longer, and that was the end of it. And then this New Year's Eve, my family came back, and we did the same thing. We walked out in time for actually we got onto the rooftop of the hotel where you could see everything down at
Oh,
Times
that's
Square.
got to be very cool.
Yeah, and so they
Yeah.
have heaters, they have space heaters, you have your champagne, but you're still not in the mobs and the crowds. And if you need to go to the bathroom, you can go.
All right, that's the way to do it. If I ever
Just
decide I
saying.
want to be in New York for New Year's Eve, I'm calling you.
Yep, I
Get
got
this
you.
thing
I
set
got
up.
you. I'll produce the hell out of it.
Yeah. Hell yes. Okay, so last question. What is the strangest, most interesting thing that's ever happened to you in this business?
Oh man. Like this is gonna be like on YouTube, right? No, I can't share that one.
Okay, I want to hear that one off the air then. Yeah.
I've had some silly things happen to me, funny things happen to me. I think one of the things that one of the times I giggle about is we went out to California to shoot for Kids Cover. And, you know, I engage with the kids often because I love kids. And sometimes I feel like they could use that little bit of love to feel more comfortable on set. So I was engaging with the kids and we're going great. Everything's fine. And one of the little boys, I was like, hey, are you ready? We're going to get you back into wardrobe and get you ready for your next shot. And the sweetest little boy, like 6 years old. And and I'm face to face with him, you know, because you talk to kids on their level. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he puts his forehead right against my forehead. And he like Eskimo kisses me. And he's like, okay. So like I stand up and this kid stands up. And as I'm holding my hand out to walk him to set, he slaps me on the ass 3 times. Bam, bam, to which I turn around, I was like, you
Oh my
little
God.
JC. I was like, don't you dare ever do that again. That is not okay. And he just got the big eyes of like, uh-oh. And they welled up and I was like, it's okay, but no more. And he's like, okay.
Wow. How old was this kid?
About 6. But he had a very open hand and he put his elbows and shoulders into it. Let me tell you.
Wow.
So that was an experience.
I want to know where he saw that. Was it an older brother? It was his dad? Who did
It had
that?
to be dad. It had to be dad. And I say this with the most love and respect. It seemed like everything I'd witnessed in every Latino household. It's like mom's in the kitchen making food and dad is passing by. It's like, what? But I also was like, yeah, you know, he's watching like hip hop videos. He's watching all this other stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I do that to Tammy occasionally.
Yeah. See, there it is.
Yeah.
Now you better tell the girls about doing that, like around town. They'll grab anybody's
Some
ass.
guy did that to Alexa. We were at Alabama. We went down to see Alabama play Mississippi State football game. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, we went and ate something for dinner, and then we were going to this Insomnia Cookies. They have these really good.
Oh, they're amazing. You guys have those?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So we were going down there, and Ashlyn, my younger one, and I walked in to the cookie place, or I think it was 2 of us. Anyway, I was inside, and I turn around and nobody's behind me, and I'm like, "Where is everybody?" And Alexa's 18 at this time, I think. Yeah, she was 18, and so I walk in, I see everybody standing in the street, and I'm like, "What are you guys doing?" And Alexa's crying. Her boyfriend's there with her. I'm like, "What happened?" She's like, "Some guy just walked by and grabbed my butt," and I was like, "Where is he?" And he was like, he went that way. And I started walking there and I said, where? And I was looking for him. He was way gone by that point. But it freaked her out completely. And I mean, he was one of those things where he came by, grabbed it, and then just hauled, went right on by her. Yeah, it was Yeah, it traumatized her.
Of course.
Yeah. So
Aw.
that was, although she still wants to go to Alabama. But
Yeah,
until
but
they,
she's probably gonna get her a little something, like a little pepper spray or something to keep in her
dude,
in a
until
side
they
pocket.
drop that out of state tuition down to in-state, it's not happening anyway because she's already had 2 years. She's been in school 2 years already at
Okay.
UNC Charlotte. So I don't think we're moving to Alabama for that. But she likes Tuscaloosa, or I don't know. She says she wants to live in Alabama for some reason.
It's okay.
I don't know
She
why.
can move
But then
there and
again,
decide she wants to move back.
that's true. She wants to live in the Hallmark Channel little town, and meet a man and open a cupcake store and that kind of thing.
Oh,
But she wants a Target at a mall right down the street within 30, 5-10
yeah,
minutes. Yeah. So
absolutely.
good luck
Well,
on finding all that. Maybe.
listen, maybe that's the challenge and people rise to the occasion. So I believe in Alexa. She can do it.
She can do it. If she wants it, she can do it. Well, thank you. That was amazing. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you, Mark.
That was probably the best story I've heard about the little boy. So if you guys watching, listening, if you're into this, if you like it, share it, like it on the little thing down there, tell your friends about it, subscribe to it, all that stuff. So I keep doing this and get some cool guests on here like Michelle again. So thank you guys again for watching and listening. Thank you, Michelle, for doing it. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
And
Mark.
hopefully I will see you very soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.